Morning. It is, what is it? It is Thursday, June 18th. We're getting very close to the NHL draft. I have been speaking to some people around the NHL in the last little while, and it's amazing what GMs are up to right now. They're preparing for the draft. They're trying to re-sign some of their own restricted free agents, and then they're also dealing with looking at potential unrestricted free agents. They're trying to get their budget set for next year. There's a general managers meeting in Vegas next week. So all the GMs will be out in Vegas for early next week, and then they all need to get to Florida in the following days. I know that lots of GMs are planning on attending the NHL awards ceremony on Wednesday night and then flying all night long, red eyes to get to Florida, to get to South Florida for early on the Thursday morning. The draft, of course, starts Friday night. So some fascinating stuff. Ed Tate and myself will be at the draft for the Winnipeg Free Press. Let's get to some of your questions this morning. I wasn't feeling overly creative this early this morning and didn't have very many of my own ideas, so we'll talk about some of yours. Does Ehlers make the team, and if so, where does he slot in? It's from Mark Ho. I think he's got a chance. I think that the ability to send Nick Petan and Josh Morrissey across the hallway to the Winnipeg Moose or the Manitoba Moose because of their contract status. They're overage. They're out of junior. They can't go back. They could go back to junior as overage players, but they can go to the American League. So I think it's easier to put those kids in the American League. Sending Ehlers back to the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, I think is not a perfect situation for the Jets. And let's face it, the Jets could use some of the high-octane offense that a guy like Ehlers can bring. So that will be interesting to see. And which brings me to another question. I've got this question from a bunch of places, and that is, why did the Jets re-sign Anthony Peluso yesterday? And they already have Chris Thorburn, who is a big guy that can fight, and at times they used Peluso and Thorburn together on the fourth line with Jim Slater, and I didn't think the line was overly effective. Paul Maurice, took me to task on that one night. We were having a conversation, and I said, I don't think you need both those guys in the lineup at the same time. And Thorburn is a more accomplished player, and I think you can get along with Thorburn. And he is of a different opinion. He thought that having young players like Mark Scheifele and Jacob Trouba in the lineup, you wanted those players to be comfortable. And Peluso he is a deterrent any way you look at it. So he does make those players feel a little better. And now I don't think that you're ever going to win a championship with a fourth line that features Anthony Peluso. To me, that's not the way the game is going right now. However, in a development stage, which is where the Jets are right now, their view is it doesn't hurt to have that muscle on the team. And if Nikolai Ehlers is going to play in Winnipeg this year, that's one of the major things he's going to face early on. This is a very small guy. Other teams are going to try and test him. And Peluso obviously he's an answer to that. So that's, to me, that has to be the thinking for the Jets. Otherwise, they think that he can, become more of a player. And I'm not so sure that's we're going to see that happen anytime soon. So to me, it has to be the fact that they think they're going to be younger and smaller going forward, and they're going to want, for the short term, it's 2 seasons, they're going to want to have a guy like Anthony Peluso around to make sure that players like Nikolai Ehlers are safe, feel safe. Enstrom, this is from Graham Gordon. Enstrom and Buff for DeKeyser and Mantha, yes or no? It depends on what you want. I think that if you are willing to get younger and say goodbye to your 2 best defensemen in order to, bring in a young guy into Kaiser who's, going to be a good player, and Manta, a guy who, we don't know what he's going to be yet. We think he's going to score goals in the NHL, but he's a very young player. So if you're willing to get very young, overnight and say goodbye to your 2 best D, currently your 2 best D, I think that's what you would have to look at. From James Stevens, Will Drew Stafford resign? Well, we know that Drew Stafford said when he left Winnipeg that he wanted to come back. This was a place and a team that he wanted to be part of. It's all about money, folks. Where does he fit in? How much does he want? And we'll know the answer to that very soon. Where do you think the Bombers have improved the most, and what do you think is a must-sign for the Jets? That's two. Jimmy Lumbago. So we'll go with your first, the Bombers. Where do you think the Bombers have improved the most? Well, I think the Bombers have improved the most in a number of places, but along the offensive line, to me, is it's pretty obvious that Picard and Stanley Bryant are a major upgrade on what they had last year. And the draft pick, Suk Chung, looks like he's going to start right off the bat. I think that the Bombers' offensive line is going to be much better, and that will allow the offense to be a lot better. On the defensive side of things, the addition of Westerman, I think, is something. If he's still hungry and can stay healthy and wants to play, we're going to see a dominant defensive lineman. This is going to be, the first time they've had a player like that, a Canadian like that, since Doug Brown retired. Do you think, this is from Ryan Conrad, do you think Suk Chung will be good enough to shore up the right side beside Daniels? Yes, I do. I don't think he'd be starting. If they didn't think he was ready to play, they have other options. He's a high-end pick. They want to win games early. They need to win games early. No, I think Suk Chung's going to be a pleasant surprise. What's the chances of the Bombers hosting a playoff game this season? I don't see it. They might get in the playoffs. I don't see them hosting a playoff game. They'd have to win, 12 games to host a playoff game? They won 7 last year. That's a major improvement. Calgary's going to be very strong again. Sounds like Edmonton's going to be good. I'm not so sure about Regina or BC. I think the Bombers could slip ahead of one of those two teams, but even then, that wouldn't have them. Let's do it this way. Calgary wins the West, so they get the bye. So then in the semi, you're going to have Edmonton hosting somebody. That's how I see it will work out. So hosting a playoff game, not for my money. Patrick Martin, what is your prediction for Bombers' record this season, and do the NHL Jets win a game in the playoffs next year? Well, let's see who plays for the Jets before we get into that. We don't want to do complete guessing here. What is the prediction for Bombers' record this year? I think that I've been saying this all along. I think they could win 9 or 10 games this year, and it wouldn't surprise me if they won 11 or 12. But so my prediction is 10-8. We'll get a couple more here real quick. What do you feel is the top end number for the salary cap for the Jets in 15-16? Let's say it comes in at 71. I think they'll spend $67 million. Does Buff get traded or extended this offseason? Well, this is a big question because, if Dustin Byfuglien, if he does, it goes this way. If he doesn't get extended this summer, I think you really have to think about trading him. So, after July 1, Kevin Cheveldayoff will contact Ben Hankinson, that's Byfuglien's agent, and say, okay, what do you guys want? And we'll find that at that point in time, or maybe that conversation's already happened. Maybe they've already discussed that. They probably have. So Cheveldayoff will know how much money and how much term Byfuglien is interested in, and he'll have to decide whether or not he wants to, to go that far or spend that much. If he does, he'll extend him. If he doesn't, and he thinks that number is going to be something he's not going to be able to meet, I don't think he wants to let Dustin Byfuglien go to free agency and get nothing for him. So then he has to determine when is the best time to trade Byfuglien. And I would imagine that would be this offseason. You'd want to do something this summer. So, listen, the draft for the Jets, the potential for the draft to be crazy for the Jets and for Cheveldayoff to be, doing more than just making selections, it's pretty big. It will be interesting to see, whether or not the Jets, hey, they could pull a blockbuster on the floor. That'll be fascinating to see whether or not it's just all about Kevin Cheveldayoff bringing in new prospects, or if it's about the Winnipeg Jets getting involved in some major trading. So I think that's about all we have time for today, folks. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks very much.